So there's interesting all of a sudden, because remember the Webbot recently, last report, talked about these holes in Siberia, these massive, gigantic holes, in which first there was one, then there was a second one. He said that we're going to be hearing about more of these holes, which I thought was Siberia region. I'm pretty sure it still said Siberia, and that when they would show up, it was kind of going to be like a circular pattern. And interesting, because not in Siberia, but near the New Madrid fault line in America, some weird little holes have been appearing. And I mean, maybe 3 or 4 foot in size, you know, diameter. So, you know, a speck of sand compared to the giant ones in Siberia. However, these weird holes are just showing up. Which is interesting, because the Webbot talked about these holes, little phenomenon showing up. And now again, it was focused on Siberia, but strange nonetheless. And then we have this huge like crack over in Mexico in the ground. This gigantic crack that just goes for the look. I don't know how far it actually was if they measured it, but it almost looked like at least a mile or two, or, you know, I'm not 100% sure. Just this weird crack in the ground out of nowhere. So I'm looking at this, and you know, I've been doing videos for, you know, technically speaking, 2009 time frame. Since then, I really started using YouTube in 2010. But I remember talking about, you know, the whole 2012 thing, the Mayan calendar, what's going to happen. And I said, you know, everything is a cycle. Everything has a peak, right? There's a cycle of something. It usually starts off one way and then it peaks. I mean, you can look at so many things and see where there's a peak to stuff, right? The solar cycle peak, etc. So I thought to myself, this stuff is gearing up. We're going to know if something's going to come with this whole 2012 Mayan calendar stuff, you know, massive earth changes, all that. We're going to know because there's going to be a peak. There has to be a peak in activity that's been building up to this event, which again, we thought would have been, you know, the end of 2012, December 2012. And yet the same stuff that we just barely started hearing about back then, which we, again, a lot of us thought, hey, so, you know, the big one could be happening soon. 2012 is right around the corner. Those things did not and have not subsided. Matter of fact, you could easily argue they've gotten worse. Not only that, we have California simultaneously, right? We have these little holes show up in the New Madrid fault line. And then in California, we have a 6.0 earthquake. I think it was in or near San Francisco. Rattled them pretty good, apparently. Minor damage, they said, nothing like major, but it was the largest earthquake they've experienced in the last 20-something years, since like 1979 or 75, somewhere around there, 1975 maybe. So, me looking at this, taking, you know, the Mayan date out of it, clearly it's still ramping up. Whatever's happening on this earth, this planet, is still ramping up. And if you haven't seen the well, it's not a documentary, it's more of an interview kind of a thing with a scientist. What was his name? It was Project Camelot that did it, and he just look up project on YouTube, Project Camelot Super Wave Theory. Matter of fact, the guy's name, I believe, is Dr. La Violette, something like that. And he talked about all these theories he's had, and, you know, NASA poo-pooed him in the 1980s, and now all of a sudden his theories have been proven correct, many of them. You know, he's like, the problem is with the scientific world is, as a scientist, they want all the credit. So if you're a freaking NASA scientist, and some no-name scientist, you know, me, talking about himself, discovers something, changes, you know, the whole thought process on something that we thought was one way, they want credit for it. So even if I'm right or someone else is right, they just ignore it, you know, pretend like nothing ever happened because they didn't, you know, they didn't discover it. You know, ego problems. So, you know, he's trying to prove a little credibility, I guess. I'm not sure. And he talks about the superwave theory, and talks about how he had access many years ago to ice core samples that they were taking out of, I think, the North Pole, either North or South Pole, one or the other. And what scientists that were there first getting these ice core samples were looking for was, you know, something else. I don't know, I don't remember what it was at the time, but whatever. They got their information. So he had what he called the scraps, basically, of the ice core samples, which still went out for hundreds of thousands of years, I believe. And he said, I could see these little ring patterns in the ice core samples. They were pretty much spaced apart evenly, and they were little darker rings. Every now and then one of the rings would be darker than the other rings, but there was no rhyme or reason to that. So it was almost like whatever this extra dark ring was periodically, it really was periodically, and you could not see a pattern. You know, it wasn't like every second, third ring, and there's 3 rings, so every second, third ring, it wasn't like that. What was there for sure was there was 3 rings spaced apart evenly, which suggests that, which he says, this is you can tell what was in the atmosphere at the time, and there was heavy duty compounds or whatever in the atmosphere during these 3 ring periods of this ice core sample he's studying. And when he gave the dates of approximate between the spacings of these 3 rings, it was interesting because it's cycles you've heard of in the past, like the old, you know, the Mayan calendar stuff, what do they call it? The precession of the equinox, the 26,000 year cycle where we go through all ages in the sky, all the symbols, you know, age of Aquarius, age of Pisces, right? Each of those cycles is 2,160 years. So he's, you know, and then I remember there was some other cycle that's like 3,600 years long. Again, something to do with one of the Mayan calendar pieces or whatever. And it was interesting because it was like every 3,600 years there's one of these little rings. Every 5,125 years approximately there's one of these rings. Well, that's an interesting cycle because the 5,125 year cycle times 5 is exactly the bigger 26,000 year cycle of where you go through the entire ages, 26,000 years, right? So the final cycle was like half of that, like 12 or 13,000 years. So it's like, okay, they got the half cycle of the full 26,000 years. They've got a 5,125 year cycle, and then they've got a 3,000. It was either a 3,100, 3,000, I think 160 year cycle, or it was the single age, the 2,160. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I saw the video. The bottom line, the point I'm making is there's 3 cycles spaced perfectly apart, thousands of years in between them, and he can clearly see from hundreds of thousands of years of ice core sample, there's absolutely a pattern here. But the darker rings, there wasn't one. So it intrigued him. What does this mean? Why? First of all, why is there even a darker one at all, like this? And you know, not just once or twice, but all the way down. And when they did chemical analysis of those rings and those particular parts, don't quote me again, it's been a long time, but I thought he said it was like barium or some chemical, you know, compound like that, and that they knew whatever this thing was could only come from outer space. Basically, it's not like found normally, like by some product of the earth, or you know, they dig in the earth and it's not part of the earth kind of a thing. So he says we know this comes from outer space, basically. So we've got a couple of things out of the way now. And he says what it appears like is there's some kind of event, and if this stuff is bombarding the atmosphere, it's telling me that the sun, and maybe this compound came from the sun or something, I'm not sure, is becoming extremely active during these 3 ring cycles. Each of those 3 rings coming very, very active. And when the sun's active, the planets become very active. Volcanoes, earthquakes, you know, just grumbling, the whole 9 yards. Major earth changes or planet changes. So the lady interviewing him was like, okay, so just out of curiosity, since you've looked at the rings all the way back, when's the next ring due, roughly? Because she says, you know, just from the dates and the times you're giving, this to me sounds like the old 2012 Mayan calendar thing. Like maybe we're soon, like this is a marker as, hey, the next ring's coming. I mean, the next solar event's coming that's going to upset the Earth, etc., cause major problems on Earth. And he said, well, to be fair, the technology we have today, going back with that kind of ice core samples, is only within 400 years accurate. It may be more accurate, but again, there's that error margin I have to throw out there. So the worst case scenario is that we're 400 years off. So she said, okay, given that, when's it due? His response, pretty much any day now. It's due. From now till another couple hundred years out, I think is what he said. You know, because if we're in the center of that, 200 years before would be, you know, let's say the year 1800, and then 200 years forward would be the year 2100. So, 200 years forward. So, anyways, we're, hey, any day now, right? So now and you can see the Earth's kind of waking up, so to speak. And she said, is there any kind of, maybe like a forewarning that you can think of that would kind of alert us that, hey, it's the super wave theory you're talking about is coming? Because he says it's these pulses that come out of the center of the galaxy that take these time frames to hit the planets, or in our case, planet Earth. And again, the sun doesn't like this energy that it's meeting with, and it causes the sun to react violently, which of course causes the planets to react violently. So he said it would be preceded, this super wave, whatever this thing is, in outer space, would be preceded by what he thought would be some type of gravitational wave. Again, just a theory, that would upset Earth and give you the warning, hey, you know, superwave's coming. And he said you'd start to see volcanic activity, earthquake, those kind of things definitely start to ramp up. So my question here is, they've definitely been ramping up, breaking all records since we've been taking records as humans. And there appears to not be an end in sight just yet. And again, these things seem to just get worse and worse. You know, we just had the Fukushima massive earthquake happen not that long ago, right? And now we've got a 6.0 in California that did a little bit of damage. We've got the New Madrid fault with holes, these weird holes that are like 3-4 foot wide. Some of them they measured, they haven't checked all of them, but some of them were 11 feet down. Just not even sure like what happened. Where's this? What's the deal here? So it is very interesting that this phenomena of Earth changes is just continually ramping up. Hasn't peaked yet, in my opinion. And which brings me to the next point of, remember old Ed Dames and the remote viewers? That guy's nailed some pretty major things in his time, major events, and talks about the solar flare kill shot that they deemed would happen. And the sun gets, again, violent, pops off a super massive solar flare, and causes major problems on Earth when it hits. And what he deemed the kill shot event. That's a hell of a word to use to describe what the remote viewer saw. The kill shot event. And then you have a guy like Courtney Brown, who also has done remote viewing, except his dates that he thought would be relevant when he did a remote viewing, it was like at the beginning of 2008, and they said, all right, look out 6 months or so, June, July of 2008, and that's the target. And then we're going to go out to the year 2013, same time frame, and see the target. Same stuff. And what the remote viewers saw was apparently on the coastal areas for sure, some type of pretty bad devastation, people scrounging for food, getting small game, as in like rodents, squirrels, you name it, stuff like that, mixing it with like roots and plant matter to try to make some kind of weird stew. The smell of unbathed, no deodorant bodies, that kind of thing. Just the type, you know, something looked like it slammed into the ocean from the outer space. You know, was it a meteor? Did something hit, cause a massive tidal wave? I don't know. But that was some of the stuff that remote viewed, except he thought the time frame I targeted was 2013. So nothing's happened of that nature at all. However, Ed Dames, same type of thing, remote viewer, Fukushima thing, they nailed with an amazing detail and the location. Except they were a few years off. Their time came and gone. Oh, it didn't happen. Guess we missed it. 2-3 years later, bam. And I mean, spot on prediction of what would happen. The problem was the stupid date was off. So if you know that, and you see 2 different remote viewing groups say, yeah, there appears to be something major, earth change wise, that throws a major monkey wrench in humanity's face, and only one of them basically says, we think it's going to be 2013, and that obviously clearly has come and gone. It still may be worth keeping in the back of your mind at this point. So at the same time, when you see the crap that's going on, they've got these fake Boston bombings, the bull crap Sandy Hook shooting hoax, where they've got the same crisis actors at one place seen at the other place. You kidding me? Come on. So it almost appears that the world needs a reset button. Everything reset, start over, game over, wipe the board, start over. The only problem with that is it is brutal when you got to start over. All the technology, all the easy life isn't quite so easy anymore. So do you really want the reset button pushed? Or do we want to keep living the way they are with the corruption, the fake fraudulent government, the banksters running everything, the oil cartel with the bankers? The thing is, we don't have to rely on someone pressing, God pressing the reset button to deal with this. We as humans can deal with this ourselves. It's just that we've been so dumbed down, I don't think we want to. And then when you try to tell someone and show them, hey, this is what's happening, they look at you like you're the moron. Get this out of my face. Quit posting this crap on Facebook. I don't want to see this. Quit posting this crap. I thought the stuff you were posting every day was crap. And what I'm posting to try to wake you up was legit. No? Oh, okay. Guess I'm in the wrong planet time frame right now. Anyways, take care.